Hello, everyone, and welcome to HIP's live stream. That's Houston Indie Podcast Society. I'm Jared, and I'm here with Ming and Carrie. How's it going, guys?
Hey
What's
man,
up?
how are you?
What's up,
I'm
everybody?
doing okay. Also, our special guest for the month of May, but I guess it's June 1st. So I guess the month of June is Jared Easley. He is a podcaster, an author, and also the co-founder, co-organizer, and also the VP of Content and Community for Podcast Movement. That is a mouthful. Jared, how is it going? Thanks a lot for joining us tonight.
I am humbled to be here, and that is one of the coolest intros that I have ever been a part of via live stream. So, gentlemen, well done.
Man, it's an impressive resume. It really is. I mean, you've been podcasting and doing podcast movement for a while. Also, when was your first book?
Well, the first book was in 2014, and yeah, that was one of those, hey, I think I can do this. Let me try this. And it was basically a presentation that converted into an Amazon ebook, basically. But, it's still on Amazon. I still get, I think, like $14, $15 a month from Amazon from someone who's gracious enough to go out and buy it. So,
hey, that's not bad.
Yeah.
Coffee.
Yeah, I'm not complaining. Yeah, my wife and I have some coffee or a donut or whatever. Thank you.
Okay, well, why don't you go ahead and introduce your two books that you have?
Okay. The first one is called Podcasting Good to Great, and it's more about growth. It's how to grow your podcast through collaboration. And the idea, the very simple, what it breaks down to is growing a podcast is a very difficult thing, as most of you know. And when you're by yourself and you're waving your arms and you're saying, look at me, listen to me, a lot of people will just ignore you, sadly. But what I found is one of the better ways to kind of get noticed is if you can, if you have a lot of people saying, hey, we really like Ming, then that seems to start working. So if enough people start saying, we really like Ming, you should check out Ming, then all of a sudden there's an interest like, hey, I should probably go check out what Ming's up to. So how do you go from being the person waving their arms saying, hey, look at me, and then become someone that people are actually talking about and that they're interested in? What I've discovered is the best way to do that is to start by being interested rather than being interesting, being interested in your actual people. And one of the ways that you do that is you just make a short list of a couple of folks that are your target audience, and you just really you show genuine interest in them. You get to know them, and like not a contrived scheming way, but if they have a blog, you share it on it or tweet it and tag them. You read it. You just find ways to contribute to people that are your people, and you just slowly compound that. So if you start out doing 5 people, maybe that turns to 10, maybe that turns to 15. But what happens is that creates a rapport. So Ming, for example, will be like, man, I really like Carrie. He's a nice guy, and he's been really cool to me. And so eventually Carrie's going to come along and have a book, or he's going to have something he wants to tell people about, a podcast society in Houston, perhaps, and
Podcast program.
Yeah, a podcast program, and then all of a sudden he can, if he casually brings that up to Ming in a non-ridiculous way, Ming is likely to be like, I like Carrie, and Carrie's got this thing going on. I don't mind telling people about this. Like, he's been really cool to me. So, well, you get the idea. When you got several people or multiple people that are then saying, we like Ming, that becomes the army. So the idea is you got to build an army, and this doesn't happen overnight. And that's the sad and just brutal truth of this whole mess.
People get so discouraged when it doesn't happen overnight.
Yeah,
It
it
takes
is.
time to build. Don't give up on your dreams. Don't
It is the garden mindset. I mean, you
Yeah.
cannot harvest right when you plant it, and it just doesn't work that way. But that, long story short, and I'm rambling, sorry, is when you get enough people saying check out Ming, then most people will say, hey, I need to check out Ming. But that's how do you start? You create rapport, and over time, generous rapport, genuine rapport will yield reciprocity. So that's really what that book's about, is how do you create rapport that yields reciprocity? And there's steps in there that it's a collaborative mindset. And I've got a lot of really good feedback, and some of the examples are dated because it was in 2014. I should probably go and update it. But if someone were to get that book for 99 cents in Amazon and they were to read it in an hour, or hour and a half, or whatever it takes to sit down and read through that, they would immediately have several ideas on how they could start collaborating with other people and eventually do exactly what we just talked about. And then I have seen people do it, and they've done it, and they'd be like, hey, this actually works. And but it's not the sexy, oh, let me just hire someone, or let me it's not, it's something that takes some time, and that's not for everyone, unfortunately. Right. So that was the first book, which I'm very proud of, even though it's not that amazing. It's a simple ebook, but it still gets people that read it. And then the second book was a co-written book. And that was actually a traditionally published book, which I know my senior year, my English teacher would just like roll over and like laugh if she knew that I had a traditional published book. But I teamed up with a guy that I know, and we created a book about creating your own influence and doing that in an authentic way. And so what at the time was very disenchanting to me was seeing all these people that were claiming to be influential online, and really they're just trying to get your money, or they're just trying to, snake oil salesman type people. And so the name of the book is called Stop Chasing Influencers, which is a contrarian title, because there's a lot of people that say, oh, you need to stand on the shoulder of giants, and you need to learn from people that, and I'm not suggesting that you shouldn't learn from someone who has experience and that knows what they're doing. I think that's wise, but I think there are things now more than ever with technology and communities such as the one that you guys are fostering and nurturing. There's ways to grow your own influence and learn the things that you need to learn without going out and hiring some crazy guru that's just, looking to expand their own ego rather than help you. So that book was actually it was an Amazon bestseller, which I don't think anybody cares about. And, it hit a couple of the lists, not the New York Times or anything, but it hit a couple of lists, and Publishers Weekly, bestseller, so these little random lists that are out there. So that was fun. And it's a traditional published book. So the thing that I learned there, not to keep rambling, is that it's so much faster to produce and put out a book if you do it yourself, if you just do it through Amazon, than it is through a publisher. A publisher just unnecessarily drags things out. So what we could have done in maybe a few weeks, it took over a year we'd had that book written for over a year before it actually ever got out.
Wow.
Which I thought was, why did that take so long? But anyway, neither here nor there.
The fact that it is in stock now on Amazon.com.
Yeah. So both those books are on Amazon and then other fine online book retailers. And I have had the urge to pick up and start writing again, but I promised my business partner with Podcast Movement. Yeah, I promised him back when we were starting out and things were kind of crazy and we were trying to figure everything out. He's like, hey, don't write any books right now. Just focus on Podcast Movement. And I promised him, I was like, you know what? You're right. Let me help you be more focused and help you on Podcast Movement. So I've been true to that. I have not written anything, or at least I've not written books. But I'm getting that itch again where, I think we got some systems in place. We got some staff now. It's like maybe I can get permission to sneak away and put something else out. Because I enjoy the process, actually. It's a fun, creative process that if people are kind of getting that itch and they want to try it, I think they should. But podcasting's that way too. That's what I love about it, is you don't have to be amazing, which is why a lot of people are on Anchor and have shows. No offense to Anchor. But yeah, I mean, you don't have to be, the most knowledgeable person. Lord knows I wasn't. I was interviewing people kind of like you guys are doing. I just get the expert and talk to them, learn from them, and that served me well because my network, at a bare minimum, my network blew up when I started interviewing people. So I started making all kinds of connections, which was, like who am I to be talking to this guy or this lady? Like, I don't know that I should. I mean, people like on reality TV shows that I watch with my wife, I'm like, I'm watching Survivor and I love Survivor. And then I'm interviewing someone from Survivor on my podcast. Like, that's crazy to me, but that happened, So.
Well, it's almost like building a community along
Mm-hmm.
with your audience. It's, building a network to have people who come on your show and you interview, talk about you or promote you in some way. I think that definitely goes a long way as well.
I think so. And yeah, I have friends. A lot of my closer friends now are podcast people. People I've connected through podcasts, not necessarily they're podcasters, but just people that I know through or because of the podcast. So I'm grateful for it. Definitely.
That sounds like merch. We need all my best friends are podcasters.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty true. It's pretty true for sure. And I think, hey man, don't let anyone stop you from writing, man. There are 24 hours in the day.
Well, okay, so I'm glad you brought that up. So, because the little happy medium, I think right now is I'm starting to write more articles, which I've never really done. I never blogged, never really got into that. Never even really did show notes. I hated doing show notes, by the way. I'm not saying you shouldn't do them. I just hated doing them myself. But now I'm starting to write more articles and like we have a Facebook group for podcasters, and so we see a lot of posts in there. It's like, hey, how do you do this? Or if you were in this situation, what would you do? And it's like, hey, that's an article. So I'll sit down and craft an article, and I'm not amazing at it yet, but I'm getting better at it. And so now I'm putting out some more articles on our website and then a couple other places. So that's kind of fun.
That's
awesome.
awesome.
And it scratches that itch, right?
Yeah, for sure. And the cool thing about that is you get to like tell people stories and just like in podcasting, you get to point to people and then you'd be like, hey, I mentioned you in this article, and then they're like, whoa, that's cool. And it might not be cool, but they think it is.
So for the uninitiated, can you explain what podcast movement is and where did it come from? What was the catalyst that made you want to start?
So podcast movement started basically when my business partner and I, we were just contacts through podcasting at the time. He had a podcast where he would interview people, and I had a podcast, which I still have. It's called Starve, like you're hungry, Starve the Doubts. And I was going to Dallas for a conference, and I wanted to do a meetup for my listeners, but I was like, what if nobody's going to show up? This is going to make me I'm going to be embarrassed. So I thought the smarter strategy would be to team up with another podcast that was based in Dallas, that was on a similar niche and category. So I found my friend and business partner, Dan, and I messaged him, never met him, but I'd listened to his show, and I thought his show was really creative. He had a really good show. And I messaged him, and I was like, hey, let's maybe potentially do a meetup, hang out and do a meetup where our listeners can come. And he was like, yeah, why not? He had never done one. So we had a meetup, and I think we had like 23 or 24 people there. And not all of those were his people. Like some of those were mine. So that was like, I was really like, this is a thing. And so we went to a conference. This was January of 2014. It was in Las Vegas, and it was a conference that was for content creators. So this would be people that were bloggers or YouTube or social media folks. And then there was like a real small redheaded stepchild corner that was for podcasters. So it was like a really tiny segment of this conference that tailored for the podcast people. And so we attended that conference, and it seemed like half the attendees of this pretty reasonable sized conference in Vegas was podcasters or wanted to be a podcaster. And so the conversation always led to, why isn't there a conference for podcasters? And because we were in the business podcast niche, that was like light bulb went on. It was like, okay, the market is telling us what they want. They want a podcast conference. And Dan Franks and myself had no experience with putting on events. So we'd never done anything like that. But we thought maybe we could be the ones to do this. We weren't influential at all. We had just started our shows. We really didn't know that many people. So It's kind of laughable now to think that we were the ones to try to champion such a big thing. But we were so naive, I think, maybe to our credit, that we just said, hey, okay, what do we need to do? We need to validate the idea. So we did a Kickstarter campaign, and we didn't have an email list. So we just talked to people that we knew that were podcasters or friends and say, hey, will you share this? Will you speak at it? Will you, tell your people on your podcast about it? And we had enough people say yes, and we raised enough money that first year, not enough to put on the event, but enough to kind of get the ball rolling. So that was in February of 2014. In August of 2014, we had the first event, which was in Texas. It was in Dallas. And the reason we chose Dallas was because Dallas had like an event the year before called Pod Camp, which I'd never heard of that, but I guess it was like a WordPress, like a variation of like a WordPress event, like a word camp, but it was a pod camp, and it was about podcasting. And so because there was some kind of podcasting event that had happened in Dallas just a year before, we're like, okay, that's probably a good event. Plus Dallas is a city that people can drive to, or it's centrally located for people to fly to. And so our goal was, what if we could get 200 podcasters to come to a conference? Can you imagine that? Like, that would be amazing. Well, we had 600 the first year.
Wow.
So you can imagine we were learning a lot, and I would love to pretend that we got it all right. And we did some things well, but we did a lot of things and learned from them. But sometimes that's the way it is. Same with your podcast. When you start a podcast, you're not going to be amazing right out of the gate. You're going to have to learn your style, and you're gonna have to learn what the audience likes, and those types of things. So now we've been doing this for several years, and so it started out as just a conference, but what we didn't realize that it would become is podcast movement has become an opportunity for collaboration and synergy across all the different categories of podcasting. And there wasn't a lot of that in 2013, 2014, meaning now the business podcasters are learning from the comedy podcasters. All these different niches are coming together and kind of sharing notes, so to speak. So you can learn from somebody who's doing a completely different show based on how they're marketing, or what their framework is for their episodes, or how they're editing, or things they're doing to get call to action or engagement with their audience, or if they're making money, what are they doing? So there's all these little things that we're starting to share with each other. And now that is really, I think that's what's really made podcast movement become what it has become, is that synergy is so amazing that when people come and they actually experience it, they're like, whoa, like, okay, this is something I want to be a part of. So the community is really big now. But I really think that's the reason is people realize, hey, for the most part, podcasters are a collaborative group, and people that are synergistic in their mindset, and not everybody's trying to screw each other over or steal from each other. Like, we actually are interested in your show, and maybe I'm not going to listen to it, but I'd love to hear what you're doing, and here's something that worked for me. Maybe it works for you. And those types of conversations create those friendships. And so it started out as an event, and then of course COVID happened, and we had to make some pivots. So now we also do newsletters, and we have a couple of newsletters that we do. We also have a professional services branch of our company, where actually other companies who have been to our events or seen our events virtually hire us or hire our team to produce things for them. And that could be like an award show, or a cruise even, we haven't done a cruise with the pandemic, but different events, right? Virtual or live. So we have a few things that we do now that have kind of made us more of a overall media company rather than just an event company. But we have like 7 employees, 7 contractors. And I don't say that to brag. I say that out of great humility, because it started out as nothing, and it took 4 years of working really, really hard to get to a point where we actually could quit our jobs and do it full time. And that was, that was the hell of it. That's the part that's non-sexy that not everybody likes to think about, but it took 4 years of having a full-time day job and then working another full-time day job on top of that. My wife, it's a miracle I'm still married. Because that was a rough time. But for 4 years, we didn't pay ourselves. And if we made money, all the money went back into the event. And that put us in a position. Thank goodness my business partner, Dan's a former accountant. He's a former CPA. So he had the mindset to think that way, because I would have been like, hey, give me some money. But we just agreed early on, hey, we're going to do what it takes to really grow this thing, because we see the validation here. People are excited about it. And so we made those sacrifices, which were not easy, but those sacrifices now, looking back, were the right decisions. And it's put the company in a position to actually thrive and move forward. And lots of amazing things are happening now. But in the beginning, you kind of had to take those hits and kind of roll with it. And I'm thankful that we did, but it wasn't easy. So
I'm glad you mentioned pivot, because the whole world sort of had a pivot during the past year and a half. So
yeah,
it's great that you were able to do that and find new venues and new revenues for the company.
And we didn't have to lay anyone off too, which is also like such an exciting thing, because now there's people that depend on it, as their livelihood for their families and stuff. Yeah. And so it's an honor to say, okay, we've got these folks and we want to care for them and make sure their families are okay. And so what adjustments do we need to make? So we had to make the adjustments, and I think it was all for the better of the company. But, sometimes those things aren't easy to do, but, they were the right thing to do. So.
I love that. Yeah, I mean, you mentioned something like podcast is such a collaborative experience, and that's one of the things I really love about it. The world is so competitive, and I work better personally when everybody wins. I'm an everybody wins kind of guy, and I love that you build something where that happens, and it's great. I think nothing makes me happier for me personally when I meet other fellow podcasters or here at the studio when where it's like, hey, what's your podcast about? What's yours about? Hey, come on, be on my show. It's like, no, you be on my show. It's like, hey, we got enough gear here. You guys can be on each other's show. I love that you've built something like that. It's so cool that you've built this empire, but you start out because you had a podcast. I love that.
That's really what happened is, hey, there's people who want a conference. Let's see if we can put one together. And we were not qualified. We were not influential. We did not have the resources to do it. We didn't have any of that. So it is hysterical now to look back and be like, how in the world, what were we thinking? If we knew now what we should have known then, we probably wouldn't have done it.
I mean, you hear that all the time. So, the guy I look up to, Kevin Smith, that's how he started with
he's amazing.
This movie. Yeah. And which is cool because I think you guys had him as a keynote speaker in 2016, I believe.
Yeah, in Chicago. He was, man, that's still one of my favorite keynotes. I mean, he was so good. Yeah, his story is fantastic.
Yeah, which is cool. And I mean, he's helped launch countless shows, mine included, and what I do now. And he's still doing it, which is really amazing.
Have you ever met him in person?
Oh, is that Kevin?
Yeah, Kevin.
Oh, yeah.
He's fantastic.
Yeah,
he's such a gracious dude, man. Like I couldn't believe it.
Even
so humble.
Learning.
Yeah.
You could say that. Yeah, I've worked with Kevin for like 25 years. So, but
I'm naive and didn't know that. Okay.
No, not at all.
Shame on me.
Yeah, no, not at all. But
me and Kevin go way backward.
But I remember he started way early on this. He's so self-deprecating, but he's truly one step ahead of everybody else. So he started in 2007, and I was like, "What are you doing?" He's like, "You've heard this podcast thing, right?" I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "I think I'm going to do it." I was like, "Wow, you're right. You could say whatever you want. You got no rules with this thing." And he's like, "Hey, can you help me get it up on iTunes?" I was like, I'll figure out how to code some RSS and all that." And we got that on there. But me myself, I didn't want to be behind a microphone. I was like, I'm your tech guy. I'll be behind the computer uploading your stuff. I have no desire to do this. And it was when he made me do it was when I figured out how awesome this was.
You never looked back.
Yeah.
You helping him do that is literally saved lives, believe it or not. I mean, there's people that have that show has really, they've been like at a low point and they've listened to it and it's like giving them, new hope and new inspiration and stuff. So that, I mean, it's amazing how podcasting can have that impact on people. And that's not, Kevin doesn't even try to take the credit for all that. I mean, he's a very humble dude.
Yeah, he should. But I think the thing I realize is like everyone should be doing this. Like literally everybody. It doesn't matter how shy you are. If you think you have nothing to talk about, surely you have that one thing you love that you can just rattle off for 45 minutes to an hour without even thinking about it.
Kevin is definitely a podfather.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, without a doubt. Yeah. He's absolutely. That's so cool that you're that tight with him. That's that's pretty awesome.
It's that I felt ass backwards into it. It wasn't. Yeah, it just kind of happened. So
well, good for you.
Yeah, but I love. I remember I was like, wait, where are you going? It's like podcast movement 2016. I'm like, that sounds awesome. And
how long was his keynote? How long?
Oh, he went over. So we told him, hey, try to stick to this time frame, and then he went over. We were like in the background, like, hey, cut it off.
No, good luck. Would you give him like an hour maybe? And I was like,
something like that. I was like, okay, we really need to stick to this time limit. And he was like, no problem. What am I talking about again? It was like, we're podcasting.
Yeah,
like, oh yeah. That was so funny. It was like, was he serious or?
No, he was serious. Yeah. You're not kicking him
on stage, and he just starts telling his story. It's like I don't know if he prepared for this, but it was awesome.
Yeah,
he can pull that off. Not everybody can. Yeah, that guy's amazing.
He really is. So, Jared, what got you into podcasting to begin with?
Oh, I didn't want to blog, which is funny now that I'm interested in art and writing. But I was more interested in having conversations. But I had that doubt in my own mind, like, okay, well, I'm not that interesting, or I don't have anything that compelling to share, and I'm not an expert really. So who's going to listen to me? So I actually believed that for a while, and then it occurred to me, okay, I don't have to be the expert. I can actually talk to people that are experts. And once I had that revelation, then there was really almost nothing stopping me except for the fact that I thought it was expensive. I thought, I got to have all this fancy microphones and all this fancy equipment. And then I learned about the ATR 2100, which maybe you guys know about. And that mic is a wonderful, affordable mic for starting out. It may not be the one that you end up with long term, but it's a great mic for starting out, and it sounds really good. So I got that, and then there was no excuse after that. I was like, okay, I can try this. I should do this. So I started in 2013, but I really should have started in 2012. So I delayed an entire year because of self-doubt and trash talk. Yeah.
Do you remember the very first podcast you ever heard and decided, yeah, I could do that?
I think from the very beginning, I thought I could do it. I mean, even as a kid, I used to make fake radio shows like with a cassette recorder, and then so like I've always been fascinated with the idea of having my own radio show. But I think the first podcast that I really got into was probably around 2005, maybe. And I was really into the TV show Lost. And so the executive producers had a show where they'd kind of talk about the episodes. And I would never miss an episode. And they had these really random, quirky jokes like, they'd be like, "Oh, don't make me bust out the banjo," and then they'd have like this banjo music play, and of course they're not playing the banjo; it's just edited over or whatever. But there was just these silly little things that just like this charm to it that I just loved. I was like, okay, you can't find this anywhere. There's nowhere else where you're going to be able to watch, the executive producers of one of my favorite shows just kind of riff and talk about the show and then have these little inside jokes that you're like welcome privy to. So that was the show that really got me interested in podcasting. But, sadly it was, it took me several years until I was able to really like, okay, I'm going to actually try this. But I'd thought all along like, oh, this would be fun to do. Just took me a while to do it.
We talked a little bit about how anybody can do a podcast. What do you think about the current trend of more celebrities and more movie companies and that type of stuff getting into the field?
Well, it doesn't bother me. I love it. I think anything that creates more visibility and interest for podcasting, I think is a good thing. So if celebrities want to then, share just like they would on a YouTube or, whatever, and they want to do it in a podcast, I think that's fine. Go ahead. There are some that might be like, oh, well, now it's harder to compete. It's harder to get noticed. And I don't really subscribe to that. I think, okay, well, if you're doing something unique and you're really making an effort to be generous and connect with your audience and stuff, I think there's room for you. There's room for everybody. You just do your thing, and
there's a niche for everybody.
Yeah, I think there's some folks that get into it with delusions of grandeur, and they think this, they're just going to instantly be the best podcaster ever, and they're going to have all this money, and and I hope that happens for them, but usually that doesn't happen right away. And you got to be pretty serious, and you got to be pretty focused, and you got to be pretty willing to learn as you go and make adjustments. And I think the folks that are committed and do those things have a good opportunity to be successful. But what is success? Some people think success is, having so many listeners, or some people may say, okay, if I could just quit my job and do podcasting full time, that's success. So it just depends on what what you want to do. But I've seen a lot of amazing stories where people have had this one little weird niche interest, and then all of a sudden they started doing a show about it, and it created a whole new world and a new opportunity they never even thought of. So it can happen.
Podcasting is really, it's hit the zeitgeist. It's everywhere now. There was a story on the Connors TV show where the guy wanted to quit his job and do a podcast. I'm like, that's on TV. That's so crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Kong versus Godzilla, like there's that's a podcaster.
Yeah.
I think the first time I ever heard podcaster in a movie was Kevin Smith when Tusk.
Oh yeah,
That guy's a podcaster. I'm like, that's amazing.
He's like, I made $100,000 last year. It's like, wow, man, like that's.
Did you really?
That's a movie version. That's a movie version. You said your first one in 2014 had 600 attendees. What's the attendance up to now? At last count?
Well, last year we did virtual because of the pandemic.
Yeah.
So 2019 was our last official podcast movement specific event, which was in that year was in Orlando, and that had about 3,000 attendees. Awesome. Yeah. So and then we did a smaller event at the beginning of 2020, just before the pandemic hit. That was in LA. That's called Evolutions, and that had probably 1,600 or something like that. So that, we're going to do that again in March of 2022. That'll be back. We're excited about that. And then interestingly enough, there's been some events that have actually reached out to us and be like, hey, can you take this over? It's like, really? Are you sure? So
we might need to talk offline later.
There's some random things that have happened, like this one event. I won't name names until everything's legit and finalized. Yeah. I guess I think it is finalized, but like this one event reached out to us and be like, we can't do this. We just can't manage it. It's too much, or there's too many expenses, or we got these various concerns, and so then we went and did the math and figured out everything. And we're like, okay, yeah, we'll take it over. So now we're going to take over an event that's actually international. It's not in the U.S. It's in a different country. Wow. And we're going to take that over and start doing that, I guess, next year. So that's, who knew? Like, we didn't expect that. And now we have an opportunity to have a good event that's already relevant and already has a good name, and has been a decent event in the country that it's in. So now we'll be kind of picking it up and running with it, and the people that started will still kind of help us a little bit, but they're just not taking on the risk financially. So yeah, so there's little things like that have popped up. They're like, hey, we didn't expect that, but now we're in a position to kind of to help and do things like that. And so I think that's exciting to see, because podcast movement, again, it was just we get 200 podcasters together. Wouldn't that be cool? And now it's okay. Let's have multiple events a year, and some of them are not even in our country. Wow. That's a little bit crazy to think about, but that's what's happening. And it's exciting for sure. It's not Kevin Smith exciting, but it's pretty exciting. So,
well, just invite Kevin to all of them, and then it'll be Kevin Smith exciting.
Yeah, right.
Man, if we could afford Kevin to all of them, I promise you we would do that. We love Kevin, and he's welcome anytime. So, yeah.
Well, you talked earlier about building community. I've kind of let the conversation go on a little bit, but I do want to bring this up. Nerdtropolis said, "Good to see everyone." Nerdtropolis, thank you so much for joining in with us. Sorry I didn't get to your comment a little bit early. I feel like the conversation was just really going really well, so I didn't want to interrupt that.
I like the name Nerdtropolis. That's cool. That's a good name.
So, Jared, I had a question for you. Are you doing anything that is like podcast space related, similar to like Clubhouse or anything like that?
We aren't personally, but we're seeing a lot of different opportunities like a Clubhouse that are popping up. One of them that we're leaning toward that we somewhat support and that we like is called Fireside. So that's worth checking out if people want to. That's actually backed by Mark Cuban, owner of the Dallas Mavericks and the guy from Shark Tank. And I think that one's got a lot of potential, but we'll see.
And that one's currently in beta, right?
It is, and it's pretty amazing what they could do. It's just they've kind of solved a lot of potential problems that podcasters have in terms of engagement and getting discoverability and things like that. They potentially have figured out some new ways to approach that. So I have personally not dived in 100% in using it as often as I should, but I know about it. I have access to it, and I do like what they're doing. And I don't have any qualms about telling people about it because I think people should check it out. Clubhouse I never really got into, to be honest. When I went into a couple of the rooms in there, it was just like kind of turned me off. Like maybe I was in the wrong rooms. but what I will say is I had a conversation with MC Hammer in Clubhouse, and that was kind of fun.
Oh,
That's interesting.
Yeah, I was in a room and MC Hammer was up there, and somehow I got the opportunity to talk to him. I don't even remember exactly how that came together, but I got the chance to talk to MC Hammer. So I started telling MC Hammer about the story. He was my first concert that I ever went to. So I told him the story, and he ended up, remembering the exact event because there were some specific things that I remembered. He brought James Buster Douglas on stage, which was like right after he knocked out Mike Tyson. And it was so he was like, "Oh yeah, I remember that." He's like, he joined us for 3 different dates, and and then he started talking about how he went on tour in the smaller markets because none of the big rappers or the big artists were hitting these smaller market towns. And I remember that was one of the things I appreciated even as an elementary school kid is like nobody ever comes to my town, and here's MC Hammer, and that's so cool that he came here. Oh, so it ended up being this kind of neat discussion. So Clubhouse is good for, I guess, meeting people that were famous in the 80s and 90s.
That's cool.
But I don't have an issue with Clubhouse. I just haven't really gotten into it. Yeah.
Well, isn't Twitter getting into the space as well?
Yeah.
With Twitter Spaces.
yeah, I've heard that.
Yeah, I personally not used their tool, which I believe is also in beta. But the more the merrier. So I know Facebook's got some things that they're going to be putting out. Actually had an opportunity to talk with some folks at LinkedIn that calls this week where they're wanting to create more opportunities for podcasters. I don't know what that entails yet. But it seems like it's wide open. The sky's the limit, really. I mean, the next 5 years could be really interesting for podcasting.
Oh yeah, I think
or
so
for
too.
audio, on-demand audio, or whatever you want to call it.
So Nerdtropolis actually chimed in again and said Hi-Ho is a new platform that seems very interesting. I haven't heard of Hi-Ho yet. Has anybody else?
Created by Kermit the Frog.
Yeah.
I haven't heard of IO, but I'll definitely check it out. Yeah, I mean,
First time I heard about it too.
if there's new platforms that are doing some innovative stuff, then it's definitely worth checking out. And
For sure.
Yeah, man, it's hard to create something new and compelling and innovative, and so I have respect for anybody that's doing that.
Right. So, Jared, what have you not been able to do with Podcast Movement that you would really like to be able to do?
That's a really good question. I mean, we tried a lot of stuff, and sometimes it didn't work, or maybe it didn't work right then. So we tried like these little regional one-day events for a while, and it just wasn't working. Maybe some of that would be nice to try again down the road. We tried like mastermind or accountability groups, and I thought that was a really good idea, but that didn't stick either. So maybe we were too early. Just creating a group of podcasters that get together and hold each other accountable and help each other when they have challenges, and they just kind of meet, once every other week or whatever on a Zoom call like this or whatever. I thought that would be kind of cool, and I thought that would be something people would be into, and it didn't really work too well. So we did a couple of cruises. Actually, we did several cruises. We did an award show. We had the Academy of Podcasters awards for a few years, and then we couldn't get anybody to sponsor it, and so we couldn't afford to do it. So we had to stop it. So that was a bummer. I'd like to bring that back. Not necessarily the award, but the Hall of Fame. Like the Hall of Fame was really good. It'd be great to induct Kevin Smith into the Academy of Podcasters Hall of Fame. He should be in there. And so if we can, get that back on track, I would really like to. That would be amazing, to have someone induct Kevin Smith in the Podcast Hall of Fame. We have the Academy of Podcasters Hall of Fame. There is no other Podcast Hall of Fame. There's several other awards now, but there's no other Hall of Fame. So I'd like to get that back up and running. But yeah, really cool. we tried so many things. We've tried so many things, and then you eventually just got to pick and choose. It's like, okay, what do we really have time to do that actually makes money and keeps the lights on? So we've kind of had to, take some of these ideas, because I'm an idea guy. I like ideas, but I'm not always great at implementing the ideas. Mm-hmm. I'm great at coming up with the ideas. So I kind of keep a list, and just when I think of something, I write it down. Be like, "Oh, this would be cool to do," and then we either do it or we don't. So, but not every idea is a good idea. I've learned that. So, yeah, we'll see. I think for now it's just continuing to produce the best type of events that we can in person and virtually, and continue to do what we can to do like you guys are doing, while you're fostering community, and just create a place that's safe where people that are interested in podcasting or podcasters can come and be a part of a community and feel welcome and continue to thrive and hopefully do what they want to do with their show and have access to the resources they need to take the steps and grow. That we didn't have a lot of that several years ago, but now there's so many people that have come together. There's a lot of veterans that are gracious and willing to mentor, willing to share, and so just keeping that type of place safe and open, for folks, regardless of their age or their gender, their sexual orientation or their religion or whatever. I'll tell a quick story. I don't want to take up, all the time, just running my mouth, but one of my favorite stories from Podcast Movement, this was actually a couple of years ago, was a lady who had a bird watching podcast. And I saw her in the hallway at the conference, and I know her well. Her name is Marty, and I was like, Marty, you enjoying the event? Oh yeah. What's the best session you've been to so far? And I'm thinking she's gonna throw out one of the obvious ones, but she told me the least obvious of all the ones I would have thought in my head. She's like, oh, that's easy. That was the session with the wrestlers, and I was like, bird watching, wrestling. Back up. Tell me. Okay, so these guys that do a really amazing wrestling podcast were talking about how they monetize and how they market and how they do all the stuff that they do. And she had taken just copious notes on all this stuff, and I was like, I love podcasting, because where else is the bird watcher going to connect with a wrestler? Like, it's likely to never happen. But it does happen in podcasting. So that's just something that I think is so beautiful, is there's so many people that connect and then really learn from each other and find that common ground, and then go off and make big things happen. And so that's been the case for Marty and a number of others. They just got that one idea from somebody else in an obscure category that now they're off and making some cool things. So anyway.
I think that's probably one of the most beautiful things about podcasting is that majority of people who are podcasters are so willing to share the knowledge that they've accumulated over, however long they've actually been doing it. But also it's just a place where veterans can actually learn some stuff from people who haven't been doing it as long. So
Yep.
there's no real rules to podcasting, obviously. So any kind of new, fresh idea that somebody brings to the table, it's worth a shot.
I agree. Yeah, there's a lot of purists still out there be like, oh no, there's only one way to do it, and it's this way. And
Yeah.
so it's kind of fun to see some of those start to conform
Right.
because there's so many new opportunities that are opening up, and it's like, well, that worked several years ago, but maybe that doesn't have to be the way you do it now. And so yeah, it's kind of fun to see podcasting reimagined and new things being created.
So where do you see the future of podcasting? Maybe the next 5-10 years. What do you see the future being?
Well, I think you're just gonna see more it becoming more mainstream. I would imagine at a minimum, more just more common. The question of what's a podcast? I think that will pretty much not be a question anymore. I think people will know. Because there'll be so many mainstream organizations and companies and celebrities that do it, that it will become like not necessarily as famous or successful, but like people are naturally understanding what Facebook is now. Podcasting would be like that. People wouldn't have to ask, well, what's a podcast? They'll know. And it's just going to be more available on demand, everywhere you are. You'll have the ability to access it through your mobile devices and through your vehicle and through your
built into more
smart
things.
devices.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just going to be more and more relevant, I think, than ever. So I don't see it. I don't see it slowing down. I think it's just going to become bigger. I think more people are going to get into it. I think it's going to make more money. More companies are going to say, okay, this is a safe place to invest in adding advertisements and things like that. I think you're going to see, it's like we're still in the wild, wild west in a way. You're gonna see a lot more development, a lot more people jump in. I anticipate those things will happen, and will we in 5 to 10 years, will we still be talking about RSS feeds? I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe that's something that all of a sudden wasn't needed anymore. It'll be interesting to see what developments occur.
My biggest obstacle when I was starting was trying to convince people you didn't need an iPod to listen to a podcast.
Yeah, that's. But if you don't know, you don't know. But,
and no people don't even know what an iPod is anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they don't really exist anymore.
If I show my daughter, she's 10. If I show her an iPod, she's going to be like, "What is this?"
Exactly. I have this on my phone, Dad.
Why won't this phone work?
Yeah.
How do I make a phone with this?
Yeah, there's no color. What's the point? Exactly. Yep.
So what? Podcast Movement 2021 is that August 3rd to the 6th in Nashville? Am I correct on that?
Yeah, and it's a hybrid event. It's in person and it's virtual. So if there's people that are saying, "Oh, there's no way I can make it in Nashville. It's expensive, or I can't travel, or I'm not willing to travel because of the pandemic, or whatever reasons," there's an amazing opportunity through virtual. We use Swap Card for that, and it's an awesome platform. And we put a lot of production quality into our virtual event, and there'll be networking and various opportunities virtually. Just like if you were at the conference. I know there's a lot of virtual fatigue because of the pandemic. I totally get that. But there is a virtual option for people that say, I'd love to still participate, but I just can't picture myself, spending the funds to travel or to get a hotel. I totally relate to that because there's been times when that was me. So if you can't make it, consider the virtual. But if you can, man, come to Nashville. It's going to be a blast. You're going to make a lot of friends. I guarantee you'll walk away from that event just being encouraged and being excited, more excited about your show. You'll have new ideas to implement. And yeah, you're going to be in a really wonderful place where people are happy to meet you and happy to hear your ideas and happy to hear about your show. And you're going to make friends. You're going to get some ideas. You're going to walk out and have a blast. I mean, you're going to have probably the most fun you've had since the pandemic, if not before. So.
Where can people find out more information? The website, social media?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, if people are just on the, if they're just looking on social media like Instagram, it's at Podcast Movement, all one word, but it's podcastmovement.com really is the hub. You can go there and that'll get you a link to the event in Nashville. So. But yeah, if you can come on. If you can't, try the virtual. And even if you don't try the virtual, we have a free option that's no strings attached. You just got to sign up for it. We have Podcast Movement University, and that's university.podcastmovement.com. And really all that is just a place where you can go and view a ton of presentations and sessions and live things like this, where people are sharing insights on making money or how to grow your audience or how to do better podcast artwork or technical stuff like how in the world do I edit with this particular software, Audacity or GarageBand or Hindenburg or whatever it is. So there's so many presentations that they're just free. It's a free place. University.podcastmovement.com. So we hope, even if you can't ever come to a Podcast Movement event virtually or in person, we hope that you'll check out Podcast Movement University. It is free, and you just have to register for it. And we hope you'll check that out, because we've put a lot of time and effort into creating a place where podcasters can learn. And we'd love for that to be at the event. But if that can't be at the event, definitely check out the university.
Awesome. So Scott says, hey, how's it going, Scott? Thanks for joining us.
Hey, Scott.
So Jared, what is one of your favorite locations that you've had a Podcast Movement event?
Philadelphia was fun. Chicago was fun. Anaheim. we did California.
List, right?
Yeah, I mean, we were in a really cool hotel for the Evolution event in LA. I'm trying to remember. It was the Millennium Biltmore Hotel. And some say it's haunted. I didn't have any freaky experiences like that, but some of the people said, "Oh, I had this weird thing happen." Like, yeah, are you sure? But that's where like Ghostbusters was filmed, and there's like all these iconic movies that have been filmed in that hotel. So when you hear about that and you see like the pictures and stuff, you're like, no way, like Mad Men and all these random things that have been filmed in that hotel. So that was a cool venue. I don't know if we'll have it there again, but for the time that was pretty fun, seeing all those places and seeing the different pictures and like I think they'd had like the old school Academy Awards like way back when. It was like Walt Disney and Shirley Temple like taking a picture together, that happened at that hotel. That was pretty cool. So yeah, that was a neat venue. But the venue in Orlando was awesome too. That was oh my gosh, what was the name of that venue? My mind's the Rosen Shingle Creek was, oh man, so nice. One of the nicest places I've been to. Really, really cool. And then in Nashville, we're at the Gaylord Opryland Hotel, which is next to Opryland, and it's an amazing place. It's an awesome, awesome place. So yeah, it's so worth coming if you can do it. Definitely.
Yeah, I know a lot of people who are looking forward to it. So yeah. So Scott said one of his favorite locations was a rum distillery in New Orleans. What is going on here? I'm kind of
jealous. You can go to a podcasting event at a rum distillery in New Orleans, then you absolutely should do that.
Didn't remember it too.
Scott and I we're in New Orleans. There was a rum distillery across from the Airbnb we stayed at. We went in there, made friends with the people who ran it, and we were like, well, why don't we just live stream from here? We kind of fell in love with the owners, and we're like, well, let's promote these guys. So and no shock, I happen to have podcast gear on me, and
as you should.
Well, you should,
because you never know when a podcast is going to break out. And the place is called the Happy Raptor Distilling, and how could you not like a place with that name? So
no, I love that name, and yeah, rum distilleries are should be frequented, and be careful, use discretion, but enjoy,
and have fun,
and record a podcast.
Yes, of course.
Right? If you can.
Yes, and you should. Even if it's just on your mobile device, just do it.
So
do
Jared,
it and then send it to Ming so he knows.
Yeah. Okay, I have a real important question, Jared.
Yeah.
Have you ever thought about having one in Houston?
Sure.
One in Dallas.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I love Houston, so never say never. But yeah, I'm down. There's obviously an awesome podcast community in Houston. So yeah, Houston definitely would be a great place to have it. We usually have it in the summer, and summer's kind of hot in Houston, but summer's hot everywhere. So that's
we can talk about some stuff later on offline. There's a couple ideas.
Yeah, venues. We got good AC in Houston.
Yeah,
fourth largest city in America.
Yeah. I've got no issues with Houston at all.
Just don't go outside during the summer.
Yeah, and I love the Tex-Mex there too. I actually used to live in Texas. I used to live in Fort Worth, but
Oh, great.
yeah, I
We
love
won't hold it
Texas.
against you, but that's
Yeah, don't hold that against me. No. I have a good heart. So no, but I do like Houston, and yeah, Houston's fine by me. I'd love to have an event there. So
awesome. Maybe we can get something going then.
okay, I'm on board.
That sounds awesome.
Yep.
All right. Well, what do you think is probably the most important thing about podcasting?
Anybody can do it. So there's really no excuses anymore, and it's for everybody. It's for a child. It's for a
Bird watcher.
Yeah, it's for a bird watcher or a wrestler. It's for no, it really is. It's if there's someone who's felt like, oh, I'm no one cares about my voice, that's not true. You can share your voice matters, and podcasting is the democratization of radio, so to speak. There's no one that's telling you no, you can do it and you should do it. And it may not be perfect right away. That's okay. You just learn as you go.
Scott said something very important. Just be yourself to podcast. And that, I mean, I think people can tell whenever you're being disingenuous.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Mhm.
They can tell whenever you're talking about something you're not really passionate about, or just kind of making up as you go. So yeah, I mean, be yourself, talk about what you love, and people will follow.
I agree. And be informed.
If they don't follow right away, don't get discouraged.
Right.
Because sometimes that takes a little bit of sweat equity, but it's well worth it.
Build the army. Build the army.
Build the army.
Yeah,
That's right.
the
Create that rapport,
right.
and that rapport will yield reciprocity. So
Very
these are
good knowledge.
True things. Yep.
Okay. Yeah, we're coming up to pretty close to an hour. Jared, I don't want to keep you all night, but yeah, definitely thanks for joining us.
We want to. Believe us. But,
Yes, we do.
Well, I'm now excited to go to a certain rum distillery in New Orleans. Let the record reflect that, and then make my way over to Houston, and maybe get some in-person hang time at the studio. How about that?
You're more than welcome.
That would be
We'd
fun.
love to have you.
All right. Don't be surprised if that happens. So, well, gentlemen, I'm grateful and really appreciate all you're doing for the podcast community there in Houston, and certainly hope to see you in person at some point.
Likewise.
Hey,
Really excited about podcast movement.
Nashville, August.
Yeah, if you can come to Nashville, come on. But even if you don't, let's hang out at some point.
Looking forward to it.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Well, any final thoughts on podcasting? Anything we didn't cover that you really just have to get off your chest?
I would love to hear what are some of the most compelling and interesting shows that you're listening to right now, because I'm looking to subscribe to a couple new shows. So if you have any shows that you just think, man, you gotta listen to this, hit up Ming, hit up Carrie, hit up Jared. They know how to find me. I would love to get me a nice little spreadsheet with some new shows to subscribe to and enjoy a summer road trip and just binge. So yeah. If you think of a show, let the guys know, and they'll pass it on to me. I'd love to hear from you.
Sounds
That's
good.
awesome, man.
Mm-hmm.
Jared, once again, thank you so much for joining us. We really do appreciate it. A lot of really good information, and we're very lucky to have you.
Well, I'm humbled
Indeed.
and appreciate you guys inviting me. Thank you.
Not a
Thank
problem.
you.
You're welcome anytime.
Thank you, Jared.
All right. Well, I'll see you next week.
And we'll be here.
So join us next month, and I guess later this month, since it is June, and we'll have a brand new fourth co-host, apparently. So I guess you can all find us on social media, Hips HTX, on all social media platforms, or you can also email us, hipshtx@gmail.com. Obviously, if you're watching this on Facebook, you can find us on YouTube. That is where our videos primarily live, and you can find that at bit.ly/hipshtxyg. And that's
I
all
want to say
lowercase.
we're gonna have more information about our Comic Palooza appearance coming up really, really soon, which is July 17 and 18 in Houston. Very, very soon there will be something for. We're going to be doing a live show there.
Oh,
And Comic Palooza is going to be so much fun. I missed it last year, and unfortunately, we all missed it last year. But
We did.
yeah, it's going to be really good to see everybody again in the flesh. So, all right. Well, that's going to do it for tonight's episode. Thank you all for watching, and join us next time. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.